Alright guys, in this lecture we're talking about eclipses. An eclipse is the blocking out of sunlight or moonlight, as either the sun or the earth, or the moon line up in such a way that they cover the sun or the moon, as seen from Earth. So we have two options really. We can have the moon in the middle so that it's sun, moon, earth, or we can have the earth in the middle so that it's sun, earth, moon. And that gives us either a lunar eclipse or solar eclipse, depending on which is in the middle. Let's take a look at solar eclipse first. To get that, the moon enters into Earth's shadow, and the Earth is always in the middle. So it must be this orientation: Sun, Earth, Moon, with the Earth in the middle, just like you see in this picture. You have the Sun over here, the Earth is in the middle, and the Moon is right there. So as the Moon goes around the Earth in its orbit, sometimes the Moon enters the Earth's shadow, just like we cast a shadow in the sunlight. The Moon casts a shadow in this space. Now most of the time, the Moon goes above or below this shadow, because of the tilt of the Moon's orbit is inclined in such a way that it usually misses the shadow. But every now and then, the Moon actually goes into this shadow and it becomes eclipsed. Now depending on if it goes in this darker part of the shadow, which is called the umbra, or the lighter part of the shadow, which is called the penumbra, that will determine how darkened the Moon really gets. But if it does enter the shadow, that's when we get a lunar eclipse. In order for that to happen, the Earth must be in the middle of the Sun and the Moon. So if it enters the umbra, we say that we have a total lunar eclipse. And if it enters the penumbra, we say that it's a partial lunar eclipse. The way that I remember this is that partial starts with the letter P, and so does penumbra. So, if this is the orientation for a lunar eclipse, Sun, Earth, Moon, what moon phase must it be for us to see a lunar eclipse? If you said full moon, you would be correct. In order for us to have a lunar eclipse, the moon must be over here on the dark side of Earth, so the sun's here lighting up this side of the Earth, when the moon is over here. If you remember from our moon phase diagram, this would be a full moon. So during a lunar eclipse, you can actually see the full moon enter into the shadow and then back out of this shadow during the eclipse. So full moon is required in order for us to have a lunar eclipse, because the moon must be located on this side of Earth, and when the moon is located here, it is a full moon. During a lunar eclipse, oftentimes the moon looks red because of the way the sun's light is shining on it, or trying to shine on it. Through the shadow, the light's waves are actually bent, and so it scatters and absorbs light differently when you start to bend the sun's rays. And for that reasoning, it turns into a reddish color, pretty much the same reason why we have red and orange looking sunsets. Lunar eclipses in general happen every 6 months, depending on where you are on Earth. We can see them relatively frequently, and if you go online, find any calculator to find out when the next lunar eclipse is here in the northern hemisphere. Alright, the second type of eclipse is a solar eclipse, and this is when the moon casts its shadow on Earth. So we've got shadows going on, but instead of the Earth's shadow, it's the moon's shadow. And really what the moon does is it blocks the sunlight out from Earth, and in order for that to happen, we must have the sun, the moon in the middle, and the Earth. So here's the sun, there's the moon, there's Earth. And as the moon enters in front of the sun shines on it, and its shadow falls onto Earth's surface, and it darkens so it's the middle of the day. The sun is out, and during the eclipse, all of a sudden, it gets dark. The shadow of the moon falls on Earth, making Earth dark in the middle of the day, which is kind of a weird thing to experience. And at the same time, blocks out the sun's rays, so we're not able to see the sun. In order for that to happen, again, the moon must be in the middle, and that would be during a new moon, located here. If the shadow of the moon falls on Earth, so that the darkest part is hitting us, you'd experience a total solar eclipse. If the penumbra falls on Earth, notice it's a little whiter, that would be a partial solar eclipse. Now if you compare the Earth's shadow to the moon's shadow, a great amount of people are able to see lunar eclipses. Far more can see a lunar eclipse than can see a solar eclipse. Notice the area of Earth's surface affected by the solar eclipse is much smaller. So they are much more rare and much more dependent on your location in order to see a solar eclipse. Again, a solar eclipse could only happen during a new moon because the moon must be located in front of the sun in order for the shadow to fall on Earth's surface. And in order for that to happen, with the moon in the middle, must be in the new moon phase of the lunar cycle. So during a solar eclipse, the sun is completely blocked out by the moon. You might be asking yourself, and if you're not, I am, how can the moon, which is so much smaller than even Earth and extremely small compared to the sun, how could the moon block out the sun, as seen by Earth? Well, interestingly, we do a little bit of quick math. The sun is about 400 times bigger than the moon, so the sun is ginormous. However, the moon is about 400 times closer to Earth, so as things get closer to us, they appear bigger. So if you ever just look at the moon and the sun in the sky, they look to be about the same size. But they're not. The sun looks so big because it's ginormous, but the moon looks the same size as the sun because the moon is so much closer to the Earth. Even though the moon is small compared to the sun, it is being close to us that makes it look so much bigger. So the size difference actually cancels out and they look to be about the same size. So from our position in the solar system, from Earth, the moon, and the sun look to be about the same size, and that's why when the moon passes in front of the sun, it can actually block it out. If we were any farther away, that would not be the case, and we would not be able to see total solar eclipses. And so the distance is what allows the moon to do this, even though it is so small.
Upon a time there was light in my life, but now there's only love in the dark. Nothing I can say, a total eclipse of the heart.